Hello, this is Jay, and welcome to 24 Hour Miniatures. Here we are in October, and in just a few short weeks, Privateer Press will be releasing the beta version of the new Warmachine app, so all of us that are currently chomping at the bit to get playing Mark IV can join the flood and start playing games of the new edition. But what is Warmachine Mark IV going to look like? Will the game be returning to Infantry Machine, as many suspect? Or will the push of high-cost, solo-driven armies like Flames in the Darkness, or Dark Legacy, or any list that can take more than one Archon that have been popular in the mainstream since Oblivion be what's in? Or will we see a rise of Jack and Beast heavy lists, something that was popular in the early days of Mark I, and saw popularity several times on and off during Mark III? Only Privateer Press can know for sure right now, but time will tell. In this video, I'll be making my best guesses about what we should expect from the Mark IV Legacy armies going forward. Well, I should say this video series, as this is just the first episode in a series that I'll be releasing over the next few weeks covering my predictions what the army releases for the beta Warmachine Mark IV app will look like. Another goal is to discuss Privateer Press's new Cadre system and what we should expect from it. And lastly, I will be mentioning my best guesses for which casters, or should I say commanders, the new name Privateer Press has chosen to start calling Warcasters, Warlocks, or any battle group controller that has access to Focus, Fury, or Essence in Mark IV, that will be leading each of the Prime Arena Legacy armies at launch. Some of my choices may surprise you, but we will leave that for later. I don't think we can discuss armies in Mark IV without discussing Cadres first. Since we know that the first Cadres for the new Mark IV armies won't arrive until the end of 2023, the first Cadres that we will see will be those of the Prime Arena Legacy armies. But what is a Cadre? As the YouTuber Optional Rules points out so well in his excellent video, the Cadre rules are disappointing, from September 14th, a video that is in reference to an insider put up by Privateer Press on September 13th called Warmachine Mark IV Cadres and Mercenaries, both of which you can find linked in my show notes below. Warmachine Mark IV will focus on self-contained armies, though the Mark IV armies will be from a specific faction, and there may be other armies available to play with that faction. Players will need to focus on collecting all the models from that one chosen army going forward, not a variety of models from their chosen faction. This is because each army is being designed to be a standalone army, and none of the other models in the faction will be able to combine with the models in that army. This is an important concept to understand going forward, but I don't think everyone grasps that well just yet. It is not going to be like playing multiple themes in Mark III, where there is still some crossover in the models between themes in each faction. Whether it's the commanders, jacks, or support options, each army will be standalone with its own choices in these battlefield roles, with all the models needed to play that army included in its various army boxes or limited separate model releases for that army. Players will be focused on collecting and playing specific armies in Mark IV, and not a faction going forward. There are two exceptions to this. First is the Unlimited Arena Legacy Armies, which will allow players to mix and match models from both Prime Arena Legacy Armies with each other and other Legacy models in the faction not in one of the Prime Arena armies. You'll not be able to mix any of the models found in any of the new Mark IV armies from the same faction. It should be noted that it is unclear yet if players will be able to mix models in the Unlimited Arena between new armies once some factions start having a second or more new Prime Arena Mark IV army in the future. I suppose it is possible, depending on how popular the Unlimited format becomes with the Warmachine community. The second exception is Cadres. Cadres will include shared models that can be taken between two or more armies belonging to the same faction and edition designation. What I mean by edition designation is that it is either a new Mark IV army or it is a Legacy army, and it can never be both. Each Legacy Cadre will include 5 Cadre offerings that can be shared between the 2 Prime Arena Legacy armies most factions will have in Mark IV. 2 of the 5 offerings will consist of a Battle Engine or Structure, or a Colossal or Gargantuan, depending on the faction, and the other 3 will be support options usable by both armies. The YouTuber Optional Rules disappointment, and mine too really, comes from this structure of how the Legacy Cadres work. We both think that the Prime Arena Legacy armies would have been better served by including the types of models found in the planned Legacy Cadres within the Legacy armies instead, and that the Legacy Cadres should have been made up of other popular models for the Mark III themes not found in one of the 2 Prime Arena Legacy armies. A good example of this would have been if the Cadre offerings had included Protectorate of Menoth Paladins or Cygnar Gunmage models, able to work for the Legacy armies of each faction, or really any other popular options from Mark III that would not be able to fill out a full Prime Arena Legacy army in Mark IV. But instead, the Cadres will include, as noted before, 3 shared support offerings and a Battle Engine or Structure or Colossal or Gargantuan, which we both feel is a big missed opportunity for Privateer Press. Privateer Press has provided us with an example of one of the forthcoming Prime Arena Legacy Cadres. This example is for Legion of Everblight. It includes the Spawning Vessel, the Blightedness Shepherd, the Succubus Warlock attachment, and when they become available, the Throne of Everblight Battle Engine, and the Archangel Gargantuan. If you ask me, the shared models found in this sample cadre for Legion of Everblight are strange, and show that not everything will be staying the same going forward in Mark III to Mark IV in terms of what can be taken in a specific army. The first Primarina Legacy Mark IV army for Legion of Everblight is going to be Blighted Ogrun, with the Mark III version of the theme being called Primal Terrors. None of the models, except the Archangel Gargantuan in the previewed cadre, could be taken in Primal Terrors theme in Mark III. I find the choice of including the Archangel over the Blightbringer Gargantuan interesting, as the Blightbringer was the far more commonly seen Gargantuan taken in infantry-focused armies like Primal Terrors during Mark III. This is because the Blightbringer did a far better job of supporting infantry than the Archangel does. None of the other choices were ever available to Primal Terrors, and it makes you wonder if the cadre is being targeted more at the other Primarina Legacy army for Legion, which is supposedly to be focused on Blightedness. This is also a strange choice, as Blightedness, at least as a whole, was not something any of the Mark III Legion themes focused on exclusively. Each Legion Mark III theme, outside Primal Terrors, had types of Blightedness available to the theme, but always had some other gimmick at the center of the theme and then one or more different types of Blightedness included, but never the same ones in each theme. Or, if the sample Legion Everblight cadre isn't just targeted at the Blightedness theme, does that mean that some of the support options found in the new Mark IV cadre will be replacing some of the support options that existed previously in the Mark III Primal Terrors theme? Or, again, are these new options supposed to enhance the army moving into Mark IV? Let's take a quick look at what was in the Mark III Primal Terrors theme, talk about what likely won't make it into the Primarina in Mark IV, and then do a rundown of what I think will be included in the Mark IV army at launch, including which 2 to 3 commanders I think will be included with the Legacy Blighted Ogrun army in Mark IV. Please look at the list of models and units found in the Primal Terrors theme during Mark III currently on the screen. If I had been choosing the 3 support options for the Legion of Everblight Legacy Cadre in Mark IV based upon the models and units in this list, my money would have been on the Forsaken, the Spellmonger, and Amok the Truthbearer as the included support options. The fact that none of them were included makes me think that the Legacy Cadre previewed by Privateer Press was created to support the Blightedness theme, more than the Blighted Ogrun one. Yes, a slightly more beast-heavy list that was typical for Primal Terrors armies during Mark III could benefit from a Blightedness Shepherd or 2, but the Spawning Vessel and Succubus seem like weird choices as inclusions in a Blighted Ogrun army to me. Looking at this list, I think the 2 entries not likely to make it to the Mark IV army is the Blighted Archon and the Hellmouth unit. The Blighted Archon was a late Mark III add to the Primal Terrors theme, and to be honest, I think all Archons will likely be pushed to the unlimited format in Mark IV simply because their power level and high costs don't seem to mesh with the style of game Privateer Press wants to focus on in Mark IV. As for the Hellmouth, this oppressive unit was one of the strongest and most annoying to deal with in the theme previously, and was on the ban list in the Brawl Machine format created by the Line of Sight podcast, which I think strongly influenced the inclusion of 50 points being the starting size game for Mark IV. 50 points roughly equates to 25 points in Mark III, the game size that Brawl Machine was played at in Mark III. So at launch of the Mark IV app, I think that the Blighted Ogrun theme called Dragon's Host will include the list of models found on the screen. Additionally, I'm confident that Animag and Carissa will both be the commanders included in the Dragon Host Primarina Legacy army. Animag was the warlock that was released with the Primal Terrors theme in Mark III and is a Blighted Ogrun herself. And Carissa's spells and feat are both a strong buff to Blighted Ogrun armies, but present a different option to Legion players than the benefits gained from Animag. It is possible that each of the Primarina Legacy armies will each only have 2 commanders available to them to use. So far, the preview armies released from Gen Con 2022 with the preview rules each only have 2 commander models in them, and only 2 commander models were mentioned as examples for commanders used by the Cygnar Trencher's first Primarina Legacy army mentioned in Primecast episode 8. However, all the new Mark IV armies include 3 commander models, so I'm choosing to believe that each Primarina Legacy army will have 3 commanders instead of 2 at launch. My choice for the 3rd commander for the Dragon Host Primarina Legacy armies is Thagrosh 1. A strong staple since the release of Everblight in Mark I, Thagrosh 1 brings support for both the infantry in his army and the beasts in his battle group, and is a good all-around warlock for Legion players to have access to. In this video series, I plan to discuss 3 or more armies per episode. However, because the opening sequence for this episode required such a long explanation, I plan to discuss just 1 more in this episode. In addition to Dragon's Host, the new Legion of Everblight Blighted Ogrun army I just discussed, I want to end this video discussing one of the armies that received spoilers in episode 8 of Primecast, namely the Trencher army for Cygnar. Released by Privateer Press on October 6 of 2022, Jason Eric joined Emmanuel Class to discuss how the legacy armies for the Primarina were chosen from the existing catalog of Mark III themes, and how, if necessary, those Mark III themes were expanded to become standalone armies in Mark IV. While few specifics were mentioned, Eric did give some examples at the end of their discussion about changes to various models and units in 2 armies, namely Trenchers for Cygnar and Northkin for Trollbloods. I covered all these changes in my previous Mark IV news update video from October 9th, and a link to it can be found in the description of this video. Please look at the list of models currently on the screen. This is what was available to the Trenchers army in Mark III, called Gravediggers. For the most part, I think the Gravediggers theme in Mark III is a good example of what could be called a standalone army, even by Mark IV standards. The only thing missing in this theme is specific dedicated workcasters, and really the theme has one in Siege 2, which was released alongside the Gravediggers in Mark III, and is for sure one of the workcasters we'll see included in the Trencher theme called the Trencher's First Army in Mark IV. Jason and Eric confirmed this in episode 8 of Primecast, also mentioning Cray as the second workcaster that would be included in Trencher's First Army. But what might we see in the Legacy Cygnar Cadre? The other Prime Arena Legacy army is going to be Storm Knights. So looking at both Mark III themes side by side, I would have guessed before listening to the episode 8 of Primecast that 2 of the choices would have been the Journeyman Warcaster Solo and the Trencher Combat Engineer unit, as both Mark III themes share at least a version of each choice. However, after listening to episode 8 of Primecast, where Eric mentions that the Trencher Combat Engineer unit is in the Trencher's First Army, and remembering the definition of cadres being the only place for shared choices between themes going forward in Mark IV, I can no longer conclude that the combat engineers will be in the Legacy Cadre. I think the likely choice for all armies is a support option that should be included in every cadre should be some sort of repair option. So the field mechanic unit for Cygnar would be my second choice to complement the Journeyman Warcaster. But that leaves us with a hole needing to be filled for the third choice. Looking at both themes and several of the other themes from Mark III, I've concluded that the Stormsmith Stormcaller would be the best third choice addition to the Legacy Cadre for Mark IV. Stormsmith Stormcallers are a great option to have in a variety of situations, and their low cost makes them perfect for helping to fill out those last few points in a list when you have 1 or 2 points extra at the end of list construction. That just leaves my choices for the Battle Engine or Structure and the Colossal to complete the theme. I believe the Trencher Blockhouse is the obvious choice for which structure should be included in the cadre. Truthfully, the Blockhouse is not a good choice for Storm Knight armies, as its abilities in no way benefit Storm Knights. But as we have seen from the Legion of Everyblight sample cadre, not every choice seems to be chosen to benefit both themes. As for which Colossal will be chosen, my choice would be the Hurricane. Unlike the Blockhouse, the Hurricane has strong points that would enhance both Prime Arena Legacy armies chosen for Cygnar by Privateer Press, and I think the Hurricane has become the preferred Colossal to include in Cygnar armies over the Storm Wall in the last several years. The Legacy Cadre picked out, let's look at what I think will make it into the Trencher's first Prime Arena Legacy army in the Mark IV beta. With Siege 2 and Cray already announced, that just leaves my suspected third commander choice to make for the army. My choice is going to be Sloane 1. Of all the casters that were popular during Mark III, Sloane is likely the most infamous, most played during the edition, with Haley 2 close on her heels. Either caster would be a strong choice for Mark IV, but Sloane gets my vote due to the background story connections to the Trenchers and the Warmachine fluff, and my desire to keep playing her with my existing collection in Mark IV. I know this is mostly a selfish reason, but I think any of the Haleys could likely be taken as the third commander choice for the Storm Knight Legacy army, or really any Legacy Cygnar army, making her a less connected choice than Sloane, in my opinion, for the Trencher First Army. From there, I think that a few of the added choices to the Mark III theme, mainly Merc choices with Partisan Cygnar that could fit in the army, and non-Trencher theme units will be cut, namely Major Harrison Gibbs, Captain Carly, and the Ranger unit. I do think everything else from the Gravediggers Mark III theme, except the Trencher Blockhouse and the Trencher Warcaster Lieutenant, which is an alternate version of the Journeyman Warcaster, will make it into the Trencher First Army in Mark IV. I think the Blockhouse and the Warcaster Lieutenant model, likely tweaked to count as an alternate pose for the Journeyman Warcaster model in Mark IV, will be included in the Cadre instead. So what do you think of my choices? Do you agree or disagree with what I think will be cut from the Mark III themes to make up the new Mark IV armies? Would you choose different models to be included in the Cygnar Legacy Cadre, or different commanders from the ones I chose? Please let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my take and what you would choose if it was up to you. Thank you for joining me for episode 1 of this multi-episode series discussing what I think the Prime Arena Legacy Beta test armies will look like at the launch of the new Warmachine MK4 app at the end of this month. Please like this episode if you enjoyed it and subscribe so that you can be informed when episode 2 releases soon. This has been Jay for 24 Hour Miniatures. Have a good night and game on.